Well, I've started recording now. Oh, and I've got my seconds on the bottom as well. So go. Okay, so we've got an extract from Act 1, Scene 2. I'm glad it's an extract from the beginning because, like most students, I'm quite familiar with the beginning. I definitely read Act 1. We know that this scene establishes something to do with like the court at Elsinore. I want to put state in the sense of stateliness. And this is the first introduction we get to Claudius as a king. What's he like as a ruler? What's he doing? And I know that by the end of this scene, he has conversation with Laertes, and it ends with Hamlet's response. So basically everything that's been established in this scene is presenting Claudius in a good light. He's a great king. And then Hamlet's sneaky aside, a little more than kin and less than kind, is acting a bit like a Volta in a sonnet. It just flips things round and makes us think, why is he objectifying? That's not the word. Should I state for the record here that I do have a really, really bad headache, just in case people think I'm slurring because I'm drunk or something. So Hamlet's response, because he's the protagonist, makes us think that maybe we shouldn't trust exactly what's said. So let's deal with Claudius's speech. And the first thing he does is acknowledge that our dear brother's death is recent. So he's not trying to shy away from this, and he's not trying to gloss it over. And that it us befitted. We know that whenever personal pronouns are used with Claudius, he uses them to great effect, to bear our hearts in grief and our whole kingdom to be contracted in one brow of woe. So we've got a nice use of metaphor there, acknowledging that the grief here has affected the whole kingdom. Yet so far hath discretion fought with nature, bit of personification, that we with wisest sorrow think on him. So a use there of antithesis, together with remembrance of ourselves. So we think on him whilst also remembering ourselves that we're the king. And you know, as a king, we've got a job of work to get on with. So that first section there seems very in tone, because I definitely want to talk about tone, respectful. And he's being very kingly, I suppose. Therefore, our sometimes sister, right, that's important, and focus is drawn to it by the sibilants. Now again, we don't get any marks for context in this part of the exam, but that's important to acknowledge for the audience of the time, because they would have seen it as incestuous that he's married his former sister-in-law. Now our queen, the imperial jointress to this warlike state. So, one of the things where he said about remembrance of ourselves, we talked about that job of work he has to do, and one of them is protecting the state from war. Thank you. Have we, as 'twere, with a defeated joy, with an auspicious and a dropping eye, with mirth in funeral and with dirge in marriage. So all through there we've got antithesis, but it's used to emphasise the point that sometimes even in the worst situations you've got to just get on with it. In equal scale, weighing delight and dole, taken to wife. And here he acknowledges, now have we herein barred your better wisdoms, which have freely gone with this affair along. So he's had the support of, let's call it government, advisors, ministers, for all our thanks. So the first thing he does is acknowledge what's happened and why. Now follows that you know young Fortinbras, holding a weak supposal of our worth, or thinking by our late dear brother's death our state to be disjoint and out of frame, something rotten, it's reminding me of, and I might want to make a mention of it there. Colleagued with the dream of his advantage, he hath not failed to pester us. Look at that word pester. It's very dismissive. It's like he's not taking Fortinbras all that seriously. You know, a small child pesters to be, you know, for sweets and to be allowed to stay up. Importing the surrender of those lands lost by his father with all bonds of law to our most valiant brother. So his father lost it. When you lose something, you're pretty careless. But the valiant brother has kept it, so much for him. Very dismissive again, isn't it? He's reassuring his people he can cope with this.